Hey everyone, if you bought our Knit How kits and you're looking for some tips on which knitting needles to buy to go with them, I have a couple of tips and pointers for you. The first thing is, usually when you're watching TV shows and movies with knitters knitting, they're using the long straight needles. But those are really only good for knitting scarves that are this long. So I actually would suggest not using them because they have such a limited use. I would recommend instead getting circular needles, which is what most knitters use all the time. You'll definitely get a lot of use out of them. And they look like this. They can be metal or wood on the tips. And then there's a cable connecting the tips together. And you can get these in all different sizes, both by the tip, which will be different thicknesses here. And that comes in a measurement called, there's a US size system scale, also in, I think, millimeters. And then you can get them in different cable lengths. So they're really handy. You can use them just as if they were straight needles and knit them back and forth, or you can use them to knit in the round, like a hat or a cowl, or maybe socks in the round, because these cables come in all different lengths, which is really handy to have. So what you can do is, when you look at the patterns that you want to knit in the Knit How book or anywhere, you'll treat those patterns sort of like a little recipe. You'll look and see at the beginning of the pattern, there will be some information. So for example, in this one, which is for these gloves, you'll see at the very beginning, it will make some suggestions about yarn and gauge, which the book will explain to you. And then there'll be some info on needles. And if you read it, it will say needles 4mm or US size 6. And then you'll know to go and get the US size 6 needle, and that's what you'll need for the project. If it's a project that's knit in the round, so that the cable size matters, it might also say US size 6, 16-inch. And then you can take that information and Google it just like that. US size 6, 16-inch circular knitting needle. And you'll find exactly what you need. And then you'll see different brands like this. This is a metal tip ChiaoGoo. You might see some wooden needles like Knitter's Pride or Leica, and you can pick whichever option you want to give a try. Metal needles are pretty fast and slippery and very, very sharp, and a lot of knitters like those for that reason. Wood needles tend to be a little slower, but also grip the yarn and the stitches a little bit firmer, which could be nice if you're a new knitter. So no bad choices, really. I would just make sure that you're picking one that looks like it has a really smooth cable like this. Nothing rubbery or tubey looking, but just a nice smooth cable. You can also get circular sets where you get a whole bunch of sizes. It would usually be like from a size 4 to maybe like a US size 15 or so. And then it comes with a whole bunch of cable lengths, and you can unscrew these and change them out. But that's a pretty good investment. They're kind of expensive to get a whole set. So if you're just starting out, I would maybe recommend just buying the individual non-interchangeables. You can see there's no screw hole here to change this out. This is fixed. And those aren't very expensive, and you can just get what you need for your first knitting project or two. And that should work out great. And then there's one other type of knitting needle that it mentions, which is the double pointed needle. And it looks like this, or abbreviated, we call it the DPN. And really, this is just for situations where you're knitting something in the round that's too small to hold a circular needle like this. So maybe your knitting increases, the hat is getting smaller and smaller, and you're at the very top and it's too small to fit around this loop anymore. You would use double pointeds, which usually come in sets of about 4, and transfer your stitches evenly across. So picture 4 of them here, the double pointed needles. And they're double pointed so that you can easily slide your stitches back and forth across them. It's not actually that complicated of a technique, it's just a little fiddly. So the book does talk you through it and show you how to do it. And that's what these are. And I actually like wooden double pointed needles because they keep my stitches from sliding off. But it's a pretty specific use that you would use them for. It's not something you need for every day, but the book will mention that to you too. And if you're curious, that's what those look like. And you would search for those by the term double pointed needles. And the sizing for them is the same. This is I think you can kind of see it here. US size 6. Oop, my fingers are covering it, but it's a really teeny tiny. Usually most knitting needles will label the size on the needle somewhere. So yeah, that's it in the nutshell. And then when you follow your recipe for your needle size, you'll get the info that you need from that. And you can also check out and see, it'll tell you what yarn you need. So I made these mitts from that first pattern, and the yarn that we give you for it, which is Great Bay Wool Works, is a worsted weight. So it'll talk to you about pattern weight and give you an idea of what you'll need for that. This particular yarn is really good for several projects in the book. Even though it's kind of in between a couple of the recommended yarns, it works really well for several of those projects. So I used it on the mitts, even though it's a little bit bigger of a yarn than that pattern called for. I used it anyway, and I made the biggest size because I wanted to make a good size pair for Phil, who has big hands. So the combination of the yarn and the needles will help you get to the gauge that you want, and the book will explain that too. So again, it's really just following a recipe, and hopefully these are some easy tips and tricks to help you know what to search for online when you're looking for your first set of knitting needles. And I hope you enjoy it. You're always welcome to email us here, needleandpearl@gmail.com, if you have any questions too. We're always happy to help on your knitting adventures. Have fun.